In the endless darkness of the universe, there were countless worlds, each filled with strange life and ancient civilizations. Among them, one planet's name was whispered with fear: Earth. To most alien species, humans were not just another intelligent race. They were a terrifying mystery. Stories about them had spread across the stars, stories so unbelievable that many hoped they were only myths. They called them Deathworlders, a name that carried both warning and disbelief. It meant creatures who came from a world so deadly that even their plants and weather tried to kill them every single day. Aliens could not imagine living on such a place. On many peaceful planets, the air was calm, the animals harmless, and the life easy. But on Earth, humans grew up facing hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, and diseases that wiped out entire populations. They had survived ice ages, volcanic winters, and wars that tore their own world apart. To other species, such conditions would have been impossible to survive. Yet humans not only survived, they thrived. This was the first reason the galaxy feared them. The legends began long before humanity reached the stars. Alien scientists observing Earth from a distance called it a cursed world. They saw how its inhabitants kept fighting, rebuilding, and advancing. Every time humanity fell, it rose again, stronger than before. Some called them stubborn. Others said they were insane. But one thing was certain: humans did not know how to give up. When their cities were destroyed, they built new ones. When diseases struck, they found cures. When enemies attacked, they fought back with a kind of fury no machine could predict. The universe had seen powerful species before, but never one with such endless willpower. When humans finally left Earth and began exploring space, their reputation spread faster than their ships. The first alien race that met them, the Ralthari, mistook a peaceful exploration crew for invaders. In panic, the Ralthari fired upon the humans' small ship. Instead of retreating, the humans repaired their vessel under fire and tried to open communication again. When the Ralthari realized they had attacked explorers, not soldiers, they expected revenge. But none came. The humans offered peace instead. That day, the Ralthari learned something more frightening than their strength: their ability to forgive. Still, fear grew among the stars. Rumors said humans had no limits, that they could survive in any environment: radiation, poison, even vacuum for a few seconds. They could eat things other species would die from. They could adapt to gravity twice as strong as most planets allowed. And their minds, those strange, unpredictable minds, could imagine solutions no computer could calculate. Where other races relied on logic, humans relied on instinct and emotion. They were unpredictable, and that made them dangerous. In distant galaxies, alien parents warned their children about Deathworlders the way humans once spoke about monsters. "Stay quiet," they said. "If the humans find us, they'll take our worlds." But no one had ever actually seen a human war fleet. The stories kept growing, mixing fear with imagination until humans became legends. Some said they could breathe fire. Others claimed their weapons could destroy planets. The truth was much simpler and far more terrifying. They were just determined. When the Galactic Council finally formed, made up of the largest and most powerful empires, the name Earth was officially marked as a restricted system. No contact was to be made without permission. To most civilizations, it was better to pretend humans didn't exist, yet curiosity never dies. Explorers, traders, and spies all tried to learn more about the mysterious species from the Death World. Some returned with tales of kindness and courage. Others never returned at all. But among all alien nations, none feared humanity more than the Threx Dominion. The Threx were a proud and ancient race, famous for their fleets and technology. They had conquered dozens of star systems, crushing anyone who stood in their path. To them, the galaxy belonged to those strong enough to take it. So when they heard about the humans, these fragile creatures who could barely survive their own planet, they laughed at the idea that such beings could be powerful. Yet deep down, they worried. If even half the rumors were true, then the Deathworlders were not enemies they wanted to face. Over the years, small pieces of human technology reached alien markets: energy weapons, medical kits, and machines that adapted themselves to their users. Each discovery shocked the galaxy. Human inventions were simple but clever, designed to survive under pressure. A single human plasma tool could work underwater, in fire, or in space. It seemed their entire culture was built around survival. Where most civilizations sought comfort, humans sought endurance. They didn't build to last forever. They built to keep going no matter what broke. From their first steps into the stars, humanity had changed the balance of power. They didn't conquer. They explored. They didn't enslave. They cooperated. And that confused everyone. For a species born in chaos, humans brought peace wherever they settled. But it was a peace built on strength, not weakness. When pirates attacked a human colony, the colonists didn't hide, they fought back. When natural disasters struck, they rebuilt within days. Slowly, quietly, the galaxy began to realize that fear of humanity wasn't just about their violence. It was about their persistence. No one could imagine how far they would go to protect their own. Then came the event that would change everything. In the far edges of the Orion Arm, a group of alien merchants picked up a strange signal, a human ship entering the outer rim. It wasn't a warship, just a long-range exploration vessel, but even that was enough to send panic through nearby systems. The Threx Dominion called an emergency meeting, debating what to do. Some wanted to send ambassadors. Others wanted to destroy the ship before it could report back. In the end, fear won. They chose to prepare for war. Across the galaxy, messages spread through the dark web of interstellar communication. The Deathworlders are coming, they said. Human ships have entered Threx space. Every station, every outpost went silent, waiting for the next move. And as the tension grew, even those who had never seen a human felt a strange chill, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. On a quiet world far from the conflict, a group of alien scholars watched the events unfold through holographic broadcasts. One of them, an old historian, said softly, "They fear what they don't understand, but one day they will see who humans really are." His words would later prove true, because the galaxy had only seen the stories, the myths and rumors, but not the truth. The truth was that humanity wasn't the monster everyone imagined. They were something far more complex. They were survivors. As the stars glittered above countless worlds, the story of Earth continued to grow, no longer as a legend of terror, but as a mystery waiting to be revealed. Those who had feared the Deathworlders would soon meet them face to face. And when they did, they would realize that the most powerful force in the universe was not destruction, but the human spirit itself. In the stillness before the coming storm, the galaxy whispered once more about the Deathworlders, but this time the whisper carried a different tone. It was not only fear, it was curiosity, awe, and a strange sense of hope. Because somewhere out there in the cold dark between the stars, humanity was on the move, and the universe was about to learn what it truly meant to be from the Death World. The Threx Dominion was known as one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. For centuries, no other race had dared to challenge their rule. Their ships were built like floating fortresses, their armies trained to obey without question. Wherever they went, fear followed. Planets surrendered before the first shot was fired, and those who resisted disappeared into silence. To the Threx, control was everything. They saw the galaxy as a board, every star a piece to be moved or taken. But when the word humans began to spread through the outer systems, something new crept into their hearts, something they had not felt in generations. Fear. It began with a strange signal, faint but unmistakably human. A coded transmission bounced across deep space and was picked up by Threx listening stations on the rim of their empire. The moment it was decoded, alarms rang through their command centers. The message carried a human insignia, the same one that appeared in old files of the Galactic Council, an ancient mark showing Earth's blue and white flag and the words, "United Nations Stellar Fleet." The Threx officers who studied it exchanged uneasy looks. They knew the legends. They had heard the stories of the Deathworlders, of how they fought wars even when they were outnumbered, of how they survived on worlds where no other life could. Still, the Threx did not believe in myths. They believed in power, and they believed their fleet was unbeatable. High above their capital world, in a massive war room filled with glowing maps and silent screens, the Dominion's leaders gathered. Their supreme commander, Lord Arvok, stood tall, his armor shining like black steel. "We will not be intimidated by stories," he declared, his voice echoing through the hall. "If these humans dare to enter Threx space, we will remind them who rules this galaxy." The council agreed, though many avoided his eyes. They remembered the few ancient reports that described humanity's rise. Reports of how humans had once fought entire wars using nothing but strategy, how they had survived even after their homeworld nearly destroyed itself. To underestimate them would be foolish, but to show fear would be worse. So they prepared for war. The humans, however, had no idea they had stirred such a storm. The signal that reached Threx space was nothing more than a routine exploration beacon. A small human research team had been mapping the outer reaches of the Orion Arm, scanning for uncharted worlds. They were scientists, not soldiers, traveling in a small vessel named Horizon Dawn. The crew of 8 humans was completely unaware that they had entered restricted space. To them, it was just another empty region of the stars. They had no clue that their simple mission would soon set the galaxy on fire. Days passed as the Threx fleet mobilized. Massive ships, some as large as cities, moved into position. Soldiers filled the barracks, engineers loaded weapons, and the war drums of the Dominion began to beat. The Threx wanted to send a message. Not a negotiation, not a warning, but a demonstration of power. They planned to strike a small human colony near the border, destroy it completely, and send the wreckage back with a message: do not trespass. It was a cruel but effective tactic, one that had worked on other species before. They believed it would make humans retreat back to their so-called death world and stay there forever. But in their arrogance, the Threx made a mistake. They forgot that humans never back down when attacked. They didn't know that every colony had an emergency beacon connected to the Central Fleet Command. When the first Threx cruisers reached the human outpost of Eos Station, they expected an easy victory. The colony had only a few thousand people, scientists, farmers, engineers. They had no weapons capable of defending themselves against warships. Yet when the Threx demanded surrender, the humans refused. The colony leader, a woman named Captain Alice Trent, sent one short message before communications were cut: "We will not bow." When the Threx bombardment began, the colony's shields fell quickly. Buildings crumbled and fires burned across the settlement. But the humans still fought. Civilians worked side by side, rescuing the injured, patching broken systems, and trying to send a final signal into space. The last burst of data from Eos Station carried only a few words: under attack. Threx fleet approaching. Send help. That message would change everything. Within hours, it reached the command ships of the United Stellar Fleet, the guardians of humanity's worlds. And when they read it, they knew what had to be done. Admiral Alara Hayes stood on the command bridge of the flagship Vanguard when she received the report. She was a calm woman, known for her clear thinking and unwavering determination. Her crew watched as she read the message silently. After a long pause, she looked up and spoke only 3 words: prepare the fleet. Every officer in the room knew what that meant. Humanity had been attacked. The Deathworlders would answer. Across human space, messages were sent to every command station. Fleets were called back from patrol, weapons loaded, ships fueled. The elite fleet, the most advanced and disciplined force humanity had ever built, was activated for the first time in nearly 50 years. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were veterans trained for the impossible, born from a species that had learned to fight nature itself and win. Their ships were sleek, silent, and deadly. Every system was designed for speed, precision, and adaptability. They didn't rely on brute strength like the Threx. They relied on intelligence and instinct. Meanwhile, the Threx Dominion celebrated too early. Their commanders believed the colony's destruction was proof that humans were weak. In their grand halls, they raised toasts to victory, unaware that the message from Eos had already reached Earth. On their broadcast channels, they showed the burning ruins of the colony as a warning to all who might defy them. "This is what happens to those who challenge Threx rule," the announcers said proudly. The galaxy watched in silence. But far away among the human fleets there was no silence, only movement, quiet and fast. In less than a week, the Deathworlders' elite fleet was ready. Hundreds of ships aligned in orbit around Mars, their silver hulls reflecting the red glow of the planet. At the center was the Vanguard, its engines humming like the heartbeat of a sleeping beast. Admiral Hayes stood before her officers, her voice steady as she addressed them. "The Threx think they can scare us," she said. "They think we'll hide, but they've forgotten what it means to provoke humanity. We don't conquer, we protect. We don't start wars, but we finish them." Her words echoed through every ship, filling the hearts of her soldiers with fire. They were not fighting for revenge. They were fighting for their people, for the right to exist without fear. When the fleet jumped to hyperspace, the stars stretched into lines of light. Every man and woman aboard felt the same cold determination. They had heard the stories. the ones where aliens feared humanity for being ruthless. But they knew the truth. They weren't monsters. They were survivors. And this time survival meant fighting back. Back in Threx space, patrol ships detected something strange. Massive energy spikes far stronger than anything they had ever recorded. Within moments, human ships began to appear out of the void, one after another, like ghosts emerging from darkness. The Threx officers froze as scanners confirmed what they saw. Hundreds of human warships, perfectly synchronized, moving in silence. Panic spread through the Dominion's fleet. "It's impossible," one commander whispered. "They can't mobilize that fast, but they could, they had." The Threx had planned for a small human response, maybe a few ships at most. What they faced instead was a full-scale formation. The Deathworlders' elite fleet, humanity's sharpest blade. And as the human ships took position across the system, every alien who had once laughed at the thought of humans being dangerous finally understood why the galaxy had feared them. It wasn't because of their weapons or their technology. It was because when humanity was pushed, it didn't break, it transformed. Far beyond the stars, in countless systems watching from afar, alien civilizations received the first images of the coming battle. Some cheered for the Threx, others prayed the humans would win, but one thing was certain. The balance of power was about to change forever. The galaxy was about to witness what happened when those once feared by legend finally decided to act. The Deathworlders were no longer myths. They were here, and this time, the universe would never forget their name. The stars above Threx space were silent, but that silence did not last long. Space itself began to tremble as something massive entered from the void. Human ships, hundreds of them, sliding out of hyperspace like shadows coming to life. Their formation was perfect. Every vessel moving in sync, engines glowing faintly blue. There was no chaos, no scattered movement, just precise coordination. It was not an invasion, it was a statement. The Deathworlders had arrived. On the command deck of the human flagship Vanguard, Admiral Alara Hayes stood calm and focused. The massive viewing screen before her displayed the Threx fleet. Huge warships bristling with weapons, spread across the system like a wall of metal. Her officers waited for her command, every heartbeat echoing in the quiet hum of the ship. Hayes had fought countless battles, but she knew this one would be remembered for centuries. "Hold formation," she said softly, her voice steady. "Let them see us." The order spread across the fleet. Every ship held position, their weapons offline, shields up. Humanity wasn't here to strike first. They were here to show the galaxy that they feared no one. The Threx fleet, on the other hand, was already on edge. Their sensors screamed warnings as they tried to measure the strength of the human fleet. The results made no sense. The human ships were smaller, lighter, less armored, but the energy signatures were off the charts. Their engines were too efficient, their weapon systems unreadable. Commander Virok of the Threx flagship clenched his claws. "They're bluffing," he growled. "Primitive machines and clever tricks. We'll crush them." But his second-in-command wasn't so sure. "Sir, they came here without firing. What if this is not an attack?" Virok hissed. "Then it will be their last mistake." Admiral Hayes studied the enemy formation carefully. She could tell by the way they moved, slightly disorganized, too confident, that the Threx still underestimated her fleet. "They think we're weak," she said quietly. Her second officer, Commander Reed, smiled faintly. "They won't think that for long." Hayes nodded. "Send out the message. Open all channels." A moment later, her voice was transmitted across the system, translated automatically into the Threx language. "This is Admiral Alara Hayes of the United Stellar Fleet. You have attacked a civilian colony under human protection. Withdraw your forces immediately or we will defend ourselves." For a few moments there was silence. Then the Threx flagship responded with a burst of static followed by a cold metallic voice. "Deathworlders," it said. "You enter our territory and dare to threaten us? You will be erased." The channel closed and on the sensors hundreds of red markers began to move. The Threx fleet was advancing. Inside the Vanguard no one panicked. Every crew member moved with the discipline of a single heartbeat. Pilots checked their trajectories, gunners aligned their targets, and engineers rerouted power to shields. Hayes raised her hand. "Activate battle protocol," she ordered. Across the fleet, lights dimmed to crimson, and the sound of machinery filled the halls. It was time. The first Threx shots came fast, massive beams of plasma cutting through the void like lightning. The human ships didn't return fire immediately. Instead, they moved as one, twisting and gliding between attacks with impossible precision. The Threx beams missed again and again, their targeting computers unable to predict the humans' movements. On board the Vanguard, Admiral Hayes watched calmly. "They're impatient," she said. "They're wasting energy." Then she turned to her gunnery officer. "Now target their lead ships." The response was swift. The Vanguard's rail cannons charged, releasing a low hum that shook the entire deck. A heartbeat later, a blinding streak of metal shot through the darkness, traveling at near light speed. It tore through the lead Threx destroyer's shields as if they were paper, hitting its core and erupting in a massive explosion. The enemy ship disintegrated, sending fragments spinning into space. The Threx fleet faltered. No one had ever pierced their shields that easily. "Direct hit," Commander Reed said, unable to hide his pride. Hayes simply nodded. Fire at will. Across the fleet, human ships opened fire. Rail cannons, plasma torpedoes, and energy pulses filled the void in synchronized bursts. Every shot was calculated, not wasted. The Threx returned fire, but their attacks grew desperate, unfocused. They weren't fighting against a force, they were fighting against strategy, precision, and experience. The humans didn't fight like machines. They fought like predators, adapting every second. If one ship was hit, others covered it. If the enemy tried to flank, the humans changed formation instantly. Their coordination seemed impossible, as if every pilot shared the same mind. On the Threx flagship, panic began to spread. "They're reading our moves," one officer shouted. "Our systems can't keep up." Commander Virok roared in frustration. "Then we crush them with numbers. Send in the second wave." Dozens of smaller Threx ships surged forward, hoping to overwhelm the human fleet. But the humans were ready. The Vanguard launched drone squadrons, small agile crafts controlled by AI co-pilots that darted between the larger ships, intercepting incoming fire and attacking weak points. Explosions lit the darkness like bursts of stars. Every drone that was destroyed transmitted data before dying, improving the tactics of the rest. The humans were learning in real time, adapting faster than the Threx could react. Amid the chaos, human Marines prepared for something even bolder: boarding missions. While most fleets fought from a distance, humans believed in direct contact. A squadron of armored drop pods launched from the Vanguard, slicing through space toward the nearest Threx cruiser. Inside the pods, soldiers sat in silence, their armor reflecting dim lights. They were not shouting or panicking, they were focused, calm, breathing steadily. When the pod slammed into the Threx hull, magnetic clamps locked them in place. Seconds later, the humans breached through with plasma cutters and entered the ship. The Threx soldiers waiting inside were ready for a slaughter, but what followed was something entirely different. The humans didn't attack wildly. They moved in teams of two, clearing hallways with precision using smoke and flash charges. Every motion was measured. The Threx fired, but the humans adapted instantly, using the ship's own corridors as cover. Within minutes, the control deck was captured. Instead of killing the remaining Threx officers, the human commander ordered them restrained. "We're not here to destroy you," he said through his translator. "We're here to stop you." The words left the Threx speechless. They had expected monsters, not soldiers with discipline and mercy. Outside, the battle continued, but the tide had turned completely. Human ships began pushing the Threx line back, forcing their fleet into retreat. One by one, their vessels fell apart under the relentless accuracy of the human guns. For every human ship lost, 5 Threx ships were destroyed. Admiral Hayes watched as her fleet executed every command with perfection. "They're breaking," Commander Reed reported. Hayes nodded slowly. "Then we show them who we are. Open channel." The Admiral's voice echoed across the system once again, calm and clear. "This is Admiral Hayes. We have disabled multiple Threx ships and secured your crews. Cease fire now, or we will continue until you can no longer fight." Her tone wasn't angry. It was firm, like a teacher correcting a child. The Threx commanders hesitated. They had never faced an enemy like this before. To them, war was destruction. To the humans, it was precision. Slowly, the enemy fire began to fade. But not all Threx were ready to surrender. Commander Virok, filled with rage and pride, ordered his remaining ships to form a final attack line. "We will not bow to Deathworlders," he shouted. He fired all remaining weapons at the Vanguard. The screen filled with red lights as the ship's shields flared. The impact shook the human flagship, alarms blaring. "Shields holding," reported an officer, her hand steady on the console. Hayes didn't flinch. She turned to her weapons officer and simply said, "End it." The Vanguard's main cannon charged, glowing brighter than any star in view. With one thunderous blast, it struck the Threx flagship dead center. The explosion that followed lit up the system like dawn. When the light faded, the Threx command ship was gone, reduced to drifting metal and silence. The rest of the Threx fleet powered down their weapons immediately. The battle was over. In the quiet that followed, the human fleet moved swiftly, rescuing survivors from damaged Threx ships and providing aid. The very enemies who had tried to destroy them were now being treated by human medics. It was an image that spread across the galaxy faster than any rumor ever had. Humans saving those who feared them. On every world, beings watched in disbelief. The Deathworlders were supposed to be cruel, heartless warriors, but what they saw were soldiers with strength and compassion in equal measure. As the Vanguard drifted quietly among the stars, Admiral Hayes looked out at the wreckage, her reflection shining faintly in the glass. "We didn't come here to conquer," she said softly to herself. "We came to remind them that humanity doesn't fear the darkness." Around her, the crew worked silently, their eyes full of pride. They had not just won a battle. They had changed how the galaxy saw them. And somewhere deep in that silent sea of stars, the universe finally began to understand that the real power of humanity did not come from their weapons or their warships. It came from something far greater, the courage to fight when needed, the mercy to forgive when possible, and the will to rise, no matter how many times they fell. The battle had begun in earnest, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble under the force of the clash between the Deathworlders' elite fleet and the Threx armada. Space, which had once been quiet and infinite, now became a theater of chaos and brilliance. Beams of energy shot across the darkness like lightning, and explosions lit up the void in sudden blinding flashes. The Threx believed their superior numbers and advanced technology would crush the humans in a single, decisive strike. They had not counted on the extraordinary coordination and adaptability of the Deathworlders. From the bridge of the flagship Vanguard, Admiral Alara Hayes watched the enemy fleet with calm focus. Her eyes scanned the vast display of the battlefield, noting every movement of Threx ships, every change in their formation. She knew that patience and strategy would be more important than brute force. Unlike most fleets, humans did not rely solely on overwhelming firepower. Every maneuver, every shot, and every response had a purpose. The Threx, on the other hand, fought with arrogance and pride, assuming that their size and weapons would automatically guarantee victory. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The first wave of Threx ships fired in unison, unleashing beams of plasma energy that cut through the void like burning swords. The Deathworlders' fleet did not panic. Instead, they moved as a single organism, twisting and weaving through the attacks with uncanny precision. Each human ship reacted instantly to threats, anticipating enemy moves and avoiding fire with calculated elegance. Even when several ships were hit, they continued to adjust their positions, closing ranks and covering each other's blind spots. The Threx were confused. Their weapons, designed to target predictable movements, found nothing but fluid, unpredictable patterns that seemed almost alive. Hayes gave the order to counterattack. The Vanguard's rail cannons hummed, releasing long, focused streams of metal that pierced enemy shields as though they were made of paper. One Threx destroyer exploded in a fiery ball of debris, its destruction sending smaller ships spiraling into chaos. The Threx fleet faltered, unsure how to respond. Another human vessel fired plasma torpedoes, striking multiple targets simultaneously. Every Threx attempt at retaliation was met with a perfectly timed human defense, either through evasive maneuvers or automated intercept drones that flew like swarms of silver insects, intercepting missiles before they could reach their targets. As the battle raged, it became clear that the Threx had underestimated human intelligence and adaptability. The Deathworlders did not just react. They learned in real time. If an enemy tried a new formation, the human ships immediately adjusted. If a weapon proved effective, they adapted their shields and tactics. It was as if the fleet itself was conscious. Every captain, pilot, and gunner connected through instinct and training. The Threx, who prided themselves on advanced AI systems and battle algorithms, could not match this kind of adaptability. Panic began to spread among their ranks. Amid the chaos, the humans executed one of their boldest maneuvers, boarding missions. While the bulk of the fleet engaged in ranged combat, human marines launched in specialized drop pods directly at Threx ships. These pods pierced through defenses at near light speed, magnetically latching onto the enemy hulls. Inside, soldiers moved with precision, cutting through bulkheads and disabling critical systems. Unlike the Threx, who often relied on sheer violence, the humans aimed to incapacitate rather than destroy. Threx soldiers, expecting slaughter, were shocked to encounter calm, disciplined opponents who offered restraint even in the midst of chaos. Within minutes, entire ships were rendered inoperable without a single unnecessary death. The sight of the Deathworlders' adaptability shook the Threx commanders to their core. Every plan they executed seemed to be anticipated and countered. Their ships, once symbols of invincibility, were being destroyed piece by piece, with humans always one step ahead. In the void of space, there was no room for error, and the Threx made many. Ships collided in desperate maneuvers, their formations breaking apart as panic spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, the humans maintained their composure, their ships moving like a single living entity. Every loss was immediately compensated, every threat neutralized with precision. Admiral Hayes monitored the progress closely. Her calm demeanor on the bridge inspired her crew. "Hold your ground and adapt," she instructed, her voice steady despite the fury outside. "Every move they make is predictable if we remain patient. Focus on their weaknesses, exploit their pride." Her strategy was working. The Threx, confident in their superior numbers, had overextended. Their vanguard was scattered, leaving gaps that the humans exploited relentlessly. One by one, the enemy ships began to fall, either destroyed or captured. The human fleet, though smaller, was becoming an unstoppable force. At the center of the battle, the vanguard itself played a crucial role. Its rail cannons and energy weapons struck key targets, breaking through the strongest Threx shields. Its drones and fighter escorts disrupted the enemy formation, allowing boarding teams to strike with deadly efficiency. Everywhere the human fleet went, the Threx were forced to retreat or face complete annihilation. Their pride and arrogance crumbled in the face of calculated strategy, adaptability, and courage. It was not just a battle of weapons, it was a battle of wills, and the human will was unbreakable. As the engagement continued, the Threx attempted to regroup. They formed a defensive line, trying to protect the remaining ships and salvage what they could. But even this effort was met with ingenuity. Human ships executed flanking maneuvers, targeting supply vessels and command centers while keeping the main line engaged. Every strike was coordinated to maximize impact with minimal loss. Even when facing overwhelming odds, the humans did not panic or flee. Their training and instinct allowed them to turn what seemed like disadvantage into opportunity. And slowly, the tide of battle shifted irrevocably in their favor. Boarding teams continued their missions, moving through Threx vessels with uncanny efficiency. They repaired minor systems, rescued prisoners, and neutralized threats quietly and effectively. On the battlefield, their presence was a constant reminder that humans were not only fierce warriors, but precise and disciplined. Even the most hardened Threx soldiers began to doubt the stories they had heard about the so-called Deathworlders. They had expected monsters, but what they encountered were soldiers with skill, patience, and an understanding of warfare far beyond what their pride had imagined. The psychological impact of the human fleet on the Threx cannot be overstated. Every destroyed ship, every failed attack, every captured vessel eroded their confidence. Where they had expected chaos, they found calm. Where they had expected mindless aggression, they found strategy and discipline. The Deathworlders were rewriting the rules of engagement simply by existing as they were, adaptable, relentless, and unafraid. Even survivors began to whisper among themselves, terrified and fascinated by the creatures they had once thought primitive. By the end of the engagement, the Threx were in full retreat. Their ships limped back toward their space, damaged and demoralized. The humans did not pursue with vengeance. Instead, they provided aid where possible, rescuing injured enemy soldiers and ensuring that no unnecessary deaths occurred. To the galaxy watching from afar, it was astonishing. A fleet that had been feared for centuries had been defeated not through sheer force but through precision, adaptability, and determination. The legend of the Deathworlders had proven itself true, but more importantly, it had revealed something new. They were not only warriors, they were protectors. In the aftermath, the human fleet regrouped, tending to their own damages while ensuring that surviving Threx ships could escape safely. Admiral Hayes looked out at the remnants of the battlefield, her face calm but resolute. The victory was complete, but it was not a victory of destruction. It was a demonstration of what humanity could achieve when pushed to its limits. Strategy, courage, and compassion working together. The galaxy would not forget what had happened here. Those who had feared the Deathworlders now understood that humans were something far more complex and far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. The Threx Dominion, once confident in its supremacy, had been humbled. Their soldiers returned to report what they had seen. Humans who could anticipate their every move, strike with deadly accuracy, and yet show mercy to those who had once attacked them. Alien leaders across the galaxy were forced to reconsider their opinions. The stories of Earth's dangerous inhabitants were no longer myths or exaggerations. They were truth. And the humans had proven it, without becoming the monsters anyone feared. They had emerged from the battle not only victorious but morally superior, leaving the galaxy in awe of their strength, discipline, and spirit. Through all of this, one lesson became clear. The Deathworlders' elite fleet was not just a military force. It was a symbol that humanity, forged in the harshest conditions of their homeworld, could adapt, survive, and overcome any challenge. They had shown that true power was not in fear or domination, but in courage, intelligence, and resilience. And as the stars settled once again into silence, the galaxy began to realize that the Deathworlders were no longer merely a legend to be whispered in fear. They were a force to be respected, a force that had forever changed the balance of power in the universe. After the dust of battle settled, the void of space was quiet again, but it was no longer empty. Debris from the Threx fleet floated like shattered stars, and the human ships glided calmly among them, tending to their own damages and attending to the surviving enemy crews. The Threx soldiers, who had only hours before been confident in their supremacy, were now subdued and uncertain. Many of them had seen firsthand the skills, intelligence, and precision of the Deathworlders, and they could not deny it. Humans were extraordinary. Yet the most shocking thing was not the humans' ability to fight. It was their mercy. Admiral Ilara Hayes moved through the fleet, checking on crews and overseeing operations. The human ships were busy but organized, each crew member following their training with quiet efficiency. Drop pods had been launched to recover stranded Threx soldiers from damaged vessels, and medical teams were already tending to the wounded. Humans were saving lives that only hours earlier had been trying to destroy them. It was a demonstration of strength that required no weapons, the courage to act ethically even when victory was total. On board the Vanguard, Hayes reflected on what this battle meant, not just for her fleet, but for the galaxy as a whole. The surviving Threx ships approached the humans cautiously, unsure if the mercy being offered was a trap. From one of their vessels, a commander hailed the Vanguard. Admiral Hayes. His voice was hesitant, tinged with fear and disbelief. Why are you helping us? We attacked your colonies. We destroyed your people's homes. We are your enemies. Hayes's response was calm and steady, carrying the weight of authority without arrogance. Because we are not defined by hate, she said. We fight to protect our own. We fight to survive. But we do not fight to become what others fear. Your people are wounded. We will help you, and we will ensure you can return safely. This is not weakness, it is the strength of who we are. The word spread across the galaxy through intercepted transmissions and observation posts. Alien races, some of whom had watched the battle from distant systems, could hardly believe what they were seeing. The Deathworlders were not only the warriors of legend, they were disciplined, clever, and above all compassionate. For the first time, the galaxy realized that the stories of humanity were incomplete. Humans were not just unpredictable fighters who could survive anywhere. They were a species capable of combining strategic genius with moral strength. Their mercy was a weapon just as powerful as any rail cannon or plasma torpedo, because it left an impression far stronger than fear alone ever could. As the Threx soldiers were escorted onto human ships for medical aid, many found themselves reassessing their entire understanding of humans. Stories they had heard in their youth, tales of ruthless Earth warriors and deadly Deathworlders had prepared them for monsters. Instead, they found organized, disciplined beings who could fight with terrifying precision and still choose to save lives rather than take them unnecessarily. Among the captives and rescued crews, whispers spread quickly. These are not savages. These are not mindless killers. They are humans, and they are extraordinary. Respect began to replace fear, and awe slowly replaced hatred. Across the Threx dominion, reports came in from commanders who had survived the encounter. The Supreme Council convened, summoned to face the undeniable truth. Humanity was unlike any other species in the galaxy. For centuries, the Threx had conquered worlds through might, intimidation, and fear, believing that survival depended solely on dominance. And yet, here was a species that had demonstrated superior intelligence, adaptability, and, most shocking of all, ethical strength. Some council members argued that humanity could be an ally. Others worried that if humans were provoked again, they might unleash an even greater force. One truth united them all: the galaxy could no longer underestimate Earth's inhabitants. Meanwhile, Admiral Hayes's fleet returned to their own territories, bringing the rescued Threx crews and any survivors of damaged ships with them. The journey back was not one of celebration, but of quiet reflection. Human officers and soldiers understood that this battle had changed the perception of their species forever. For centuries, humans had been feared, their legends exaggerated into myths. Now those myths had been confirmed, but not in the way most expected. Humans were powerful, yes, but they were more than power. They were endurance, adaptability, strategy, and mercy combined. This was the lesson the galaxy needed to learn. The colonies that had been attacked were rebuilt with incredible speed. Humans were accustomed to rebuilding after disaster, whether natural or man-made, and the recovery of Eos Station became a symbol of resilience. Not only were the colonies repaired, but advanced systems were installed to prevent future attacks. Citizens returned to their homes with renewed confidence, knowing that their protectors, the Deathworlders' elite fleet, were ever vigilant. Stories of bravery and quick thinking spread among the settlers, highlighting ordinary humans who had performed extraordinary acts. These stories would become the foundation of new legends, showing that survival was not merely about fighting, it was about courage, intelligence, and heart. Across the galaxy, intelligence networks and scouts reported the event to their homeworlds. Alien civilizations began to share information about the humans, replacing fear with a nuanced understanding. Diplomats, previously wary of contact with Earth, now approached with curiosity and cautious respect. Trade alliances and cultural exchanges were reconsidered in light of the display. Humanity had proven that they could defend themselves against overwhelming odds and, simultaneously, act with ethical strength that inspired awe. The concept of humans as mere Deathworlders, monsters of survival, was changing into something more profound. Humans as a species of influence, capable of shaping the galaxy not through fear alone, but through power tempered with morality. Even among the Threx survivors, a transformation began. Soldiers who had once laughed at the idea of humans being extraordinary now recounted tales of the battle in hushed tones. "They fought like nothing I've ever seen," one officer said. "Their ships move as one. Their soldiers think faster than any AI, and yet they saved us." Another added, "If we ever face them again, we will not underestimate them. But perhaps we should hope to learn from them instead." The humility in these statements marked a turning point. The Threx had met their match and realized that their previous methods of domination could no longer guarantee supremacy. The galaxy had learned a critical lesson. Fear was not the ultimate measure of power. Understanding was. As news of the battle and its aftermath reached the farthest corners of space, historians began to rewrite the legends of humanity. Long before humans traveled among the stars, alien civilizations had whispered tales of the Deathworlders as dangerous, chaotic beings. These whispers now became documented accounts of strategy, precision, and compassion. The Deathworlders were no longer mythical monsters. They were real, capable of extraordinary feats and guided by an unyielding moral compass. The galaxy's perception shifted from fear to admiration, and admiration to cautious inspiration. For the first time, species across different systems began to consider humanity not as a threat, but as a potential partner in the larger web of galactic civilization. Admiral Hayes reflected on the larger implications of the victory as the fleet returned home. Humanity had defended itself, rescued those who would have been considered enemies, and demonstrated the true meaning of strength. The battle had been about survival, but it had also been a teaching moment for the entire galaxy. Strength without morality, she knew, led only to destruction, but when power was combined with empathy, discipline, and courage, it became something greater, a force that could reshape alliances, redefine diplomacy, and inspire civilizations to achieve more than they thought possible. Over the following months, the Deathworlders' influence began to grow quietly but steadily. Alien diplomats sought audiences with human leaders, scientists shared knowledge, and traders established new connections. The story of the battle, the mercy shown, and the tactical brilliance of the humans became legend throughout the stars. The Threx Dominion, humbled by their defeat and impressed by humanity's ethics, reconsidered its approach to conquest and diplomacy. Other species who had once feared the so-called Deathworlders began to see them as symbols of resilience, innovation, and justice. Humanity's reputation transformed from terrifying and unpredictable warriors to revered protectors and exemplary strategists. In the heart of Earth's home system, a ceremony was held to honor the bravery of those who fought in the battle. Families, officers, and citizens gathered to recognize the efforts of the elite fleet and the civilians who had endured the attack on the colonies. Speeches were given, recounting not just the victory in combat but the humanity shown in its aftermath. The words echoed through the halls and across the globe. Courage and morality are the twin pillars of true strength. Children listened with wide eyes, inspired by the tales of those who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious without losing their principles. The galaxy would never be the same again. Where once humans were feared as Deathworlders, known only for their ability to survive anywhere, now they were admired for a combination of intelligence, bravery, and moral strength. Planets previously isolated by fear began to consider alliances, knowing that Earth and its people represented not only power, but guidance. Diplomacy, defense, trade, and culture began to expand in ways the galaxy had never seen. Humans had not only defended themselves, they had reshaped the cosmic narrative. Admiral Hayes, standing on the bridge of the Vanguard, looked out at the stars with a quiet sense of satisfaction. The battle had ended, but its effects would echo forever. Humanity had proven that true power was not measured solely by weapons or numbers, but by the combination of courage, intelligence, adaptability, and compassion. In that moment, she understood that the universe had finally recognized what humans had always known. Survival was just the beginning. True greatness lay in how one wielded strength, and in that, the Deathworlders had no equal. And so humanity's legacy began anew. The story of the elite fleet, the protection of colonies, the mercy shown to enemies, and the strategic brilliance displayed in the heart of Threx space became a beacon of hope and respect throughout the stars. From fear to admiration, from legend to reality, the galaxy had finally seen the true face of humanity. The Deathworlders were no longer creatures to be feared. They were a force to be understood, respected, and remembered forever. Their journey, their courage, and their compassion had reshaped the cosmos itself, proving that strength tempered with ethics could change not just the outcome of a battle, but the very course of history.